Welcome back to my fourth submission 25 comic book unboxing. Today we're going to run through the first 12 books that have come back from CGC. Unfortunately, there will be a retrospective again rather than a showing because they came in and they were gone within about 24 hours for the bulk. So I'm getting to the point now where I've sort of got some common sellers, frequent sellers that are interested in buying the books, and they wait for me to come in and then they're happy to grab some. Yeah, so if you're new to the channel, welcome, subscribe, have a look around. There are some other videos where I've done, so if you've seen any of those before, you'll know that what I do is I show the book, in this case a retrospective one. I hide the grades, I talk about some of the work I've done if there's anything significantly relevant. I talk about what my expectations are from CGC grade, and then I do the reveal, and I also do pricing, so what it costs me, fair market value, and a running total. So if that's your kind of thing, stick around. Let's get stuck into it. So first off the chopping block, we've got Amazing Spider-Man 180. A lot of the books in this submission were from an online seller who was liquidating his collection, I believe. I bought them one by one, bought them online at fair auction, so, you know, but they were from the US, so there's extra shipping. This was one of them. The majority of this lot are from him, I believe. So this one had, it was a pretty clean book. It had one sort of tick, but it felt soft around the edges. I just felt it just wasn't sharp. I was expecting to come in the 9.4 to 9.6 range because of that. I guess I'm just mindful of corners. So CGC, fully expecting a 9.4 to 9.6 and happy to get that. The book cost me $18 shipped. And CGC came back and said 9.8. Pretty happy with that. First submission, first book in this submission, and off to a great start. Yeah, I guess the corners, the edges weren't really soft after all. I did do some lightening on the cover a bit, otherwise I thought it was quite tidy. So moving on, ASM 196, newsstand edition. So this was from the same seller, and I thought it had a couple of ticks, but it was definitely too heavy for a 9.8. I was just hoping it wouldn't get down to a 9.4. It cost me $22 and shipped it up to CGC and expecting 9.6, and they said 9.6, which is great. So it's pretty much what I expected, and they quoted spine stress lines, and I think that's spot on. Okay, so moving on to the next book, ASM 208, I believe it's the Fusion cover. It only cost me $8 and had some light marks and damage from sitting in a rack. Even though it's not a newsstand edition, it must have gone on for resale at some point, and it had some bands around the back. And on the spine, I thought it just broke a bit of the color there. I tidied it up as much as I could, and just tried to make it, give it its best life. But I thought it would come back into about a 9.4 to 9.6 range. Still a nice book, but just not quite there. Sent it off to CGC, and they said 9.8. So a couple of great outcomes already on this submission, which is fantastic. And yeah, happy to get that at 9.8. Moving on to Amazing Spider-Man 303, so straight into the McFarlane era. This one cost me $16, again from that seller who was looking to move on some of his books. Thought it had a couple of negligible ticks on the front cover, and some dust shadow on the back cover needed to be cleaned off, which I did, and I thought it looked much better. I was hopeful of a 9.8, but I knew 9.6 would be in there, but I had sort of had 9.8 question mark. So I sent it off to CGC, and they said 9.6. So a bit disappointed not to get the 9.8 on that one. Spine stress lines to the cover, so I think that's perfectly fair. Moving on to ASM 307 newsstand edition. All right, so this book has featured before, I believe. This is one that I bought as a Halo 9.6, came in with far too many ticks. I was disappointed, the pictures weren't that great. I resubmitted it to CGC, I think maybe my first submission, I'd have to check back. It came back as a 9.2 and listed finger bends, which obviously I'd left. So I actually ended up cracking it out of the slab and working on it again. I knew it was never going to be 9.8. I just wanted to make sure I gave the book the respect it deserved. It still had some ticks after I was done with it. I removed the finger bends. There was a couple of stubborn ones. I knew I was never going to recoup my money. It was $171 all told, so there's a fair bit of investment in this book, just from the initial purchase and then the submission and now the resubmission. So I was expecting anywhere between 9.2 to 9.6. I was really hoping it wouldn't be a 9.2, or at least the finger bends were gone. Sent to CGC and they said 9.4. So I think that's where that book's going to lie now. And that's already been sold anyway. So yeah, it's a 9.4. I think that's a fair grade. The ticks were quite strong. Greater notes are spine stress lines to the cover. I think that's fair. You can probably see them in the picture. So yeah, that's the end of that saga from that book, and hopefully whoever gets it's really happy with it. Moving on to the last Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man of this submission is 345 newsstand. So this was by a different online seller on Whatnot. Cost me $21, and it basically just had a few light ticks. It was tidy otherwise, gave it a cleaner press, tidied it up. I just wasn't sure whether they were negligible or minor, so whether it was going to come back through a 9.6 or a 9.8. So again, I had 9.8 question mark on this one, so I was hoping for a 9.8, but CGC had a look and said 9.6. So not really a surprise, and they said spine stress lines to the cover. I think maybe another press on this one might have benefited it, but otherwise that's perfectly fine, and it'll go to its new home. Moving on now, so New Mutants number 98. So classic McFarlane cover. That's probably the only real reason I picked up this book. It's just a McFarlane cover. It was only costing me $8. It was a clean copy with a few ticks. The main issue was there were some marks on the back cover. I'll put them up on screen. It's just the back cover of the slab. I lightened them as much as possible. I think I saw one other 9.8 with something similar, so I was hopeful it would get ignored, but I really wasn't expecting it to do anything come back in about a 9.4 best case. So sent the CGC and came back as a 9.0, and I think that's fair. Their greater notes specifically call out a stain to the right bottom of the back cover, which was pictured there. Not much could have done about that. I did try, so it was just unfortunate. Next book, Omega Man number 3 from the online seller who was moving some of his books. First appearance of Lobo, so I paid a fair bit. So again, I'm happy to pay for quality books. $117, all shipped and taxes. I got it, and there was a little tear on the back cover edge. It was the only real issue after removing the staining and marks from the back cover near the top staple. I had some yellowing all up the spine side, and I thought, whatever, at least if that's off, whatever remains should be invisible or negligible, and we'll see what we get. I was hopeful of a 9.6 to 9.8. So 9.8 was on the cards, but I was thinking 9.6 is probably where it's going to land. CGC had a look at it and they said 9.6. If we look at the greater notes, spine stress lines to the cover. So that's fair. Slight loss on that one, but it was worth a crack for a book that I like. Moving on to book number 9, we're back on Spider-Man, and this is from the 1991 series with McFarlane. It's a newsstand edition. It's the only reason I pick up any of these issues from there, if they're newsstand, like the Spawns really. It had a crunch on the bottom of the book, so spine crunch had obviously been dropped back in the newsstand at some point. And it looked like it had left a crease. It was lighter on the back cover because it's white, and I thought it was going to land somewhere in the 9.2 because of that, because I worked it down, I reduced the reduced the crunch, but it left a small crease. It was nice. The press actually did a really good job of reducing the crease. I thought it almost looked like a tick. So maybe 9.6, but really 9.2 is where it should have been. Sent to CGC, book cost me $13, not sure if I mentioned that. And they said 9.4. And they quoted on the greater notes, crease to the left bottom of the front cover. So they treated it like a crease, which is right. But obviously a small crease because only 9.4 on the black. So not a bad outcome for the book. I think that book got to the best it could have. All right, 10th book, so is another Spider-Man number 6, newsstand edition, as I said. This one cost me a little bit more, $19. it was a fairly clean copy, except on the left side near the spine. I remember it had a little bit of something. I couldn't really work it down too much because then I would have removed the color. But I had a look at some of the other number 6 newsstands, including another one of mine that I have, and it actually had a very similar, if not identical, mark there. So I thought it might just get ignored. I tied it up otherwise and got it all worked out, and I'll probably zoom in the picture on that little thing because I remember it's still there. Cost me $19 and sent it to CGC hoping for a 9.8. I thought it had a solid chance, and they said 9.8. So happy to get a 9.8. So that little mark must have been a standard defect in this book. Moving on, Silver Surfer number 50 newsstand edition. Paid $22 for this, and it's a cardstock cover, foil, embossing, all those things that I've come to hate. I worked on it a little bit. I reduced some of the back cover. Basically had a bit of a crunch. The front cover was nice, had a little bit of creasing on the back cover. I worked it to reduce as much as I could. I thought it was going to come back as about a 9 because of that work. But I did what I could on the back. So sent it to CGC and they said 9.4. So I think I've done well with that book. Grader notes are crease left center of back cover, crease right bottom of back cover. So yeah, there's some light creasing on the white back cover, which was non-reducible. I think I did a decent job on that book. Still took a bit of a loss, unfortunately. But moving on to the last book of the first part of this submission, which is Star Wars number 68 newsstand edition. Picked this one up off eBay for $54. It was a really nice book. I thought it needed some work. It was dirty. It had a few issues. I think a couple of them were manufacturing. I did a lot of research into it, and almost everything came out that should have, other than sort of those newsstand lines up the middle, which you should be able to see in the picture, which do exist in other 9.8s. It had a bit of creasing and softness from a crunch because it had a fairly severe crunch, which tied it up really well, I thought. By the time I was done, the book, if you're just holding it, it just looked really nice. It presented beautifully, and you can see it here. So ultimately, with the issues it had, I was expecting it to come in as a 9.0. Sent it to CGC, and they said 9.0. So they agreed with me, but it is the most beautiful presenting 9.0 Star Wars 68 I would expect that many of us have come across. And the grading notes are sort of the crease left bottom or front cover, left top or back cover, spine stress line. So just some of those creases from the crunches just couldn't be worked out, couldn't be removed. But certainly the book presents beautifully. So that was, I think, one of the first books that got snapped up. So my running profit loss for the first 12 will be on screen. And what I'll do now is I'll publish this, and then in about a week or maybe 5 days, I'll publish part 2, which I'm about to record. In part 2, it's primarily Wolverine and X-Men keys, and there are some nice books and some nice results. So the second part of the submission was real pick me up. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.